Hello, and welcome to Coffee with Dem, name in progress. A new show in which me and Coffee sit down and talk about movies and shit, I guess, now. We kind of have a history of it. We used to sort of watch everything together, me and you.
Mm-hmm.
Most shows and movies and stuff we would tend to watch together in the years of old.
Generally, like, me and Dem did an episode of their podcast, Behind the Wires, and it was generally well received, I think.
Beyond the Wires. Get the name right, Coffee.
I said Beyond the Wires.
You said behind.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, it's
Sorry.
fine.
Just to let the audience know, I am hungover. So there will be
That feels appropriate.
multiple blonde coffee moments throughout this. I am merely a himbo in sheep's clothing. But yes, we decided, fuck it, like, why not? To just do an actual podcast together about media, because that was generally what we talked about in the other episode. So we've decided to do a media podcast, but we both kind of agreed that it's mostly squared around very camp, stupid 90s films. And then possibly after that, we'll see where we go.
Yeah.
There's going to be, like, different stuff that we do talk about as time goes on. Like, if either of us ever consume media that we're both consuming that has, like, arcs and stuff. Like, an example is I am at some point going to start One Piece soon enough here.
I thought you had already started it. Did you not actually
Still haven't,
start
baby.
It? Oh, okay. I
No.
see. Yeah, I talked
I'm
Coffee into
moving.
starting One Piece. As
Yeah.
I've slowly begun to talk all my friends into watching One Piece. I really like One Piece.
Yeah, Dem is like the one of the only people I know who's like consistently watches One Piece, and I've always wanted to, but at the moment I'm just like, yeah, all right, I'll do it. So I will. That will be like a consistent thing on this podcast. But for the moment,
I was gonna say, when we actually get into talking about One Piece, like whenever we do that episode, I'll probably also mention stuff like One Piece, and just other stuff to actually help people catch up, because there are a lot of ways to watch One Piece if you just want to catch up very quickly. That cuts out
there's
substantial amounts of shit that doesn't need to be there.
Which I might do. We'll see what happens as we go forward with it. But for the moment, we're kind of, while we're finding our feet, we're gonna usually have one movie to kind of ground each episode. And Dem, if you want to describe what today's episode is based around.
Yeah, so we were talking about films to watch for the inaugural episode here, and I believe, Coffee, you suggested Spice World or something, and I said to you, listen, we can do that, but I need you to watch the Josie and the Pussycats movie with me first.
Yes.
And so
some background.
We watched Josie.
Some background here about Josie's, like not even like the film itself. When did you watch this movie for the first time? Because this was my first viewing seeing it.
About a month ago, honestly.
Okay.
Some friends around the house I'm at, we watched Josie and the Pussycats together out of kind of nowhere, and it turned out to be like a really surprisingly good movie that I ended up enjoying, and I was like, this is something Coffee would enjoy. I understand you enough to understand when I watched it that I was like, yeah, this is right up your alley. It's just camp enough.
I think it's become quite quickly one of my favorite. Obviously, it's not a 90s movie, it's 2001, but like there's a lot of leeway between the two.
Boy, is it. It's a 2001 movie, but it's specifically carbon dated to like 3 months before 9/11.
Pretty much. And like that is going to be maybe not a consistent rule for the podcast, but like a lot of these camp, would you call them comedies? Like they are films that are just not made anymore, realistically.
Yeah, they're like camp comedies that exist. I wouldn't say it's the only thing we'll ever cover, but it is something that I think it's a genre, a particular genre that existed in like the 90s to the early 2000s, and then pretty much 9/11 it stopped. These movies
more
really
or less
didn't happen after 9/11 because it wasn't, you just couldn't do it anymore.
it's like a mixture of that, and then like obviously trends started to happen. I've always had the opinion that Michael Bay kind of changed how films were structured after like what it was in 2006. So like you do still get these films. Oddly enough, in 2006, another film that we will talk about is the iconic piece of cinema that is Bratz.
Oh yeah, at some point I have never seen the Bratz movie either.
Can't wait for you to see that piece of pure cinema. But like in terms of Josie as like I suppose a property, I always had known it as a film, and like a piece of like camp cinema, and it has like a huge gay following, and like it's really well regarded for its soundtrack. But I did not know it was like part of Riverdale. I did not know it was an Archie property. I did not know all of this background to it. So I was very like taken aback when the movie started. I was really confused by it in a way.
Yeah, so I guess I should just give some briefer here. So the Josie and the Pussycats movie is a anomaly in that it takes place in the Riverdale universe. It's part of Archie Comics, Josie and the Pussycats. Do you have any connection to Josie and the Pussycats, like the show or the comic or anything?
No, these things, like including Riverdale and Archie, they are not popular in Ireland by any means. They never have been, they never will be, which makes sense because, I mean, realistically, something like that is not going to be popular here. It's a piece of Americana. Why would it? It's so focused on American culture. Yeah. The only thing that came close was, for some reason, there was a huge surge of popularity with Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Yes. Sabrina's really big over here.
Another
but
weird
specifically,
thing that's connected to Archie.
Yes, but specifically the original sitcom, not the Netflix series. Mm-hmm. Neither of those did particularly well over here, whereas Sabrina really was kind of beloved by a lot of people. And I don't know, myself included, I adored that show. Salem is a true gay icon. But
it's true.
I guess maybe as time goes on, I'm just starting to realize maybe I actually do like Riverdale and Archie, because it seems like I enjoy everything that surrounds it, and all the like key extra characters. Don't forget, Sonic is part of the Riverdale cinematic universe.
It's true. Sonic is part of Riverdale. I guess at some point this means that this is going to turn into a Riverdale podcast, so I look forward to that.
I do think that is where our future. I think that is definitely where our future heads at this point. Have you ever?
I've been meaning to watch that show. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Same.
I need a reason. So if we end up watching Riverdale, yeah, we'll talk about Riverdale. I'll watch Riverdale.
Do you have any idea if Josie as like a group show up in the actual TV show? Like, I couldn't tell you. I have no idea.
I have no idea because I haven't watched that show at all. But my guess would be probably, because my understanding is, especially in these last seasons, a lot of characters from all over have been showing up in it. It's sort of doing a Marvel thing where like all of a sudden characters are showing up. But Josie is also like, Josie and the Pussycats is a type of media that is very... It existed for a very short period of time in American culture in general, which is that era of like boy bands and these girl groups, like the Spice Girls and stuff like that, where there were these little like bands of maybe 3 or 4 people, and the act was sort of sold around them more than anything, you know. Because that's where you get stuff like Spice Girls and the Backstreet Boys and all the boy bands that were a thing in the 90s.
And you can definitely tell that this film is like a pastiche of that, and it plays with that. I mean, it kind of takes the concept of like TRL, isn't it? And basically flips it on its head and kind of like critiques it for kind of the mess and confusing element that it is. Obviously that type of like, I guess, pop culture like idol worship still exists for sure. I mean, if you go on K-pop Twitter, you can see it.
Oh yeah. But the K-pop has kind of sort of revived that, I think, in the minds of most people.
Yeah. But like this form of hyper exposure to kind of artists that kind of popped up out of nowhere and became incredibly famous, maybe only releasing a few albums or so at the time. really is not a thing anymore. Culture is a lot more homogenous now, so you don't really see kind of like an obsession level as like you had in the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, not really. So it's definitely like it's I would consider this a very carbon dated film. You can tell the exact era it came out. You can tell there's a lot of it that's very interesting and ahead of its time. But before I guess we start to really dive into it, because we've kind of been tiptoeing around just like going into it, I want to give a brief sort of rundown of the film and like its background in terms of what it is. So as I mentioned, this film came out in 2001. It came out in April 11th, 2001. So it's just slightly pre 9/11. So because of that, it's still got that vibe of like one of those early 2000s, late 90s comedy films where everything is super upbeat and lighthearted and kind of fun. While also lacking certain elements that are like pretty common in those. For instance, there's not really a lot of weird racism and shit in this movie, which is weird.
No, not particularly. There's obviously
normally
like
always in those types of genre.
There's definitely elements to it. Like Rosario Dawson's character is definitely like, obviously we're jumping ahead here to actual discussion of the film, but she's kind of like played to be a problem in the band from like a marketing point of view, and you could argue that that's kind of like a weird racial element to it.
I don't think that's done with
no,
not malicious I don't think
intent,
that's done with malicious intent, especially since there's a line in the film where like the Alan Cumming character says she's like he specifically refers to her as like a white actress but a bit darker or something, in a way that's like very apparent that it's like, oh, okay, this is a dig at the record industry, not so much
that. Yes, and like Alan Cumming is the one who's saying that as a character, and it's very literal that he's an asshole.
Yeah,
as he often is in these films. I was gonna say, like, this film is very interesting, as you say. Like, it's a 2001 film. Its cast is kind of nuts. So we have.
Oh yeah, there's.
Let's just get into it. We have the Pussycats themselves, who are Rachel Lee Cook, Tara Reid, and Rosario Dawson. 3 actresses who were realistically massive during their time period, but have kind of disappeared now, other than Rosario Dawson. You're right, you have Alan Cumming, who plays
know why
kind
they
of...
have disappeared?
Okay, well, go on.
It's because of this film.
Oh, so yes, because it did terribly.
Something
yes,
to preface this entire film. First off, I'll just say this off the top. I love this film. I think that's the general consensus of both of us. When this film came out, it was universally panned, and I do think that is something very important to understanding it. But when talking about this film, you do have to remember that pretty much everyone attached to it had their career bombed, including the 2 writers who wrote it. Which I do want to mention them because they really haven't done anything since. But they're Deborah Kaplan and Harry Elfont, I'm sorry. They are like a writing duo that before this wrote basically a whole bunch of like, you know, those sort of cheesy 90s comedy films. None of them particularly stand out. They did like the Brady Bunch sequel film. They did,
oh shit, really?
Yeah, they did the Brady Bunch sequels film. The only one that really stands out is they did Flintstones Viva Rock Vegas. They did write that.
Wow. Okay, this is all making a lot more sense now. Okay. But, the genre really makes sense.
Yeah, okay. They did the Brady Bunch sequel, the Flintstones, and then they did Josie. They also did a movie called Can't Hardly Wait, which I haven't seen, but my understanding is it's another comedy film of that type that just didn't do very well. But yeah, and then after Josie and the Pussycats, they just disappeared.
Interesting. And do we have any MIA of where they could be now? Like,
they're starting to write TV and stuff again, but for the most part, after Josie, they more or less left the industry. Probably not by their own volitions, because this movie did very poorly and it was very poorly received, and I think from the studios, they were probably looked at as like a liability. So it seems like they mostly just kind of, after Josie, worked on kind of crap. I haven't seen it, but a lot of it looks like it's very cheap, very like movies, like TV movies and TV shows and stuff. Like nothing that is particularly interesting. It's a bunch of really, really small stuff on projects that don't look particularly interesting, and I think it's just, unfortunately, this movie tanked their reputation, which is really unfortunate.
Now, were they director and writer duos, or
yes.
was one of them a director? Okay,
yeah,
so they were both.
They were both writer duos, and this was one of the first movies they like directed as well.
Okay, interesting.
They were,
and like,
yeah.
Do you have any like ideas of what the actual budget was? Because this is not a cheap-looking movie by any means, especially for 2001. Like, it has a lot going on.
In terms of the budget, the estimated budget is around 40 million.
Damn. Okay, that makes sense.
So it looks like, this thing had a ton of money put into it, and there are a few things I'll get into once we like fully get into it. But yeah, it's definitely a very big budget film. It was intended to be, the reason you mentioned Scooby-Doo, like that sort of piqued my interest, is because this was actually intended to be the start of like the Archie film universe, or not the Archie film universe, the like Hanna-Barbera film universe.
Okay,
so
that is Archie part of Hanna-Barbera?
I think like the animated show might have been, if there was like an Archie animated show, but Josie and the Pussycats counted as Hanna-Barbera because they had like an animated show that was by Hanna-Barbera.
Ah, okay, that makes sense.
So this was supposed to sort of be the start of like a live-action film universe for the Hanna-Barbera stuff. So this and Scooby-Doo. And when this did really poorly, Scooby-Doo kind of suffered because of it. The studio started to lose a lot of like confidence in Scooby-Doo. And that's why that movie, by the way, if I don't know when the last time you saw it, but Scooby-Doo is like very much on the line of being straight up an adult film. In terms of like it makes 100%. A lot of references to stuff, and the reason why is because it was originally not shot to be like PG, just like Josie. But after Josie did really, really poorly, the studio was like, we need to cut a bunch of this crap out. We can't have this be we can't have this be for adults. It needs to be for kids.
Sure, it needs to be marketable in a way that would be more easy to market towards children, I suppose. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's particularly weird because it's like a big studio movie that is not, it doesn't really hold anything back, like you would expect from movies that would get this amount of budget, you know. But I mean, I guess with that we can kind of just go into it and talk about the film itself. So starting off with this film, first off, I'm pretty sure like within the first scene, it might even open on just Alan Cumming. I think it actually plays a song from the fake band De Jour. But basically,
the intro. The intro is basically kind of a structure of it's setting up De Jour, who are pretty much the Backstreet Boys-esque group, and they're singing their #1 hit "Backdoor Lover," which is an excellent intro song.
Do you want to know what De Jour means, by the way, in I believe French?
What does it mean?
It just means of the day, because they're the boy band of the day.
Oh, that's smart. I did not pick that up. That's a good one. And yeah, it basically sets them up as, like, as you say, kind of the hot new band of the day. And then Alan Cumming is introduced as their agent, as Alan Cumming ought to be. He usually is some kind of agent or manager.
He's so good at
He is excellent. And then we get introduced to kind of the thing that you were the most excited to talk about with me about this film is its use of product placement.
Yes. So moment 1 of the plane, there is Target logos everywhere, and there's also sheets of Bounce. I don't even know if you have Bounce in Ireland, but Bounce is like
is it a
dryer sheets.
Toilet brand?
No,
okay,
it's like
sheets.
Dryer sheets, and there are like boxes of Bounce that are like glued into the wall on that plane.
Yeah, a lot of the film's kind of presentation for its interiors it is this maximalist kind of attempt to use capitalist brands as both kind of like a sense of luxury and kind of being on top, but also the thing is, in these kind of films, or like in culture in general, you'd see stuff like Gucci logos, or you'd see really high quality brands like being kind of flaunted by the elite. Whereas this, it is just kind of whatever he could find, whatever the director could find or get to be in the film.
It's
like
not
the Target logo is no, but it's also it is so clearly laid out to be a joke that when you see a plane that is presented, it's confusing if it's like if it's being promoted like by Target, or they just like the Target logo. It's very funny. It's very nonsensical, because as the movie progresses, almost every interior has very clear marketing in it.
Yeah.
And they're all very timely to like 2001, but they're so timely they don't make any sense.
This film loves Sega. The directors love Sega, is the one thing I took away. They love the Dreamcast.
So yes, we're obviously getting further ahead. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that when it shows up. But yeah, it very much feels like they just took whatever and put it there.
Yes, yeah.
Which I should mention now, as we sort of talk about that ads. It's something I mentioned to you when you were watching it, but one of the most fascinating things about this film, especially considering how much ads are shoved in it and how much it is about consumerism, is that none of that is paid for. Every single advertisement in this film is free. The directors, writers, they didn't get any money for any of that. They just put it in there.
That is still such a fascinating element to this film, because it almost makes the logos and the use of kind of hyperculture, which is what this film is about, realistically. Like, this is kind of a critique on capitalism in general, which, again, I'm going to probably assume that the original Josie is not...
No, not really.
...concerned with.
No.
But that's what makes this film so kind of entertaining, is that, like, it's poking fun in every way it can, really. And, like, obviously a majority, as we'll go through it, like, the whole context of the film is be yourself, don't let, like, kind of labels and corporations decide your ideas and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, you're right, its use of kind of insane logos and stuff is definitely part of that. But not to obviously dwell on that too much, because that is pretty much what the whole film's about. Mm-hmm. Basically, this boy band, this de jour band, who are kind of set up to maybe be the main characters of the film. It's a fake out. They're then all basically killed in a plane
killed
crash.
Because they hear some of the, like, they start to hear something on one of their studio tracks, and then they ask Alan Cumming about it, and it's incredible. He makes like a single phone call, and then he just decides to murder them, and it starts the film.
Yeah, it's a very snappy intro. The whole movie's kind of editing is cartoonish to like a delirious level, as it should be, because this is essentially a cartoon for adults.
Yeah, it feels like a cartoon, which is very surprising, because a lot of these live-action adaptations kind of lose that in the process, because they want to be like realistic or whatever.
Absolutely. And like that's the thing about this Josie film. Is it a adaptation, or is it an idea of an adaptation? Is it a critique? It's kind of everything.
Yeah.
And as the plane crashes, basically, it's then kind of revealed that this film is going to be about finding a new band to kind of become the new hot group, more or less. Alan Cumming literally jumps out of the plane as it's crashing, and then just parachutes down. And of all places, he ends up in Riverdale, of all places.
Yeah, he ends up in Riverdale, and it's very funny because I could time the exact moment you saw that. Because I received a text that was just like, "This is in the Riverdale universe?" Which is basically the same reaction everybody I had watching it had. Because we all saw that Riverdale sign, and we're like, what?
Yeah, it's definitely shocking. I did not expect to see it, that's for sure.
The biggest twist in the film.
And it's a film of twists, I'll say that.
Yeah, but so he goes to Riverdale, and then it like cuts over to basically Josie and the Pussycats playing a little song. I believe they're at like a bowling alley or something.
Well, so yeah, the intro basically cuts out, and then you get the first of many song intros that are kind of like a montage of the credits, and you're introduced to the three girls who are, I believe the names are, it's Josie, Melody, and Valerie. The three of them played by Rachel Lee Cook, Tara Lead, and Rosario Dawson. And they kind of each represent kind of a form of trope. Like Rosario is the serious one, Josie is kind of like the main girl who's kind of like edgy a little bit, and like Melody's kind of just like a stoner. And they're all best friends. We get introduced to maybe my favorite film, the song of the film, which is Three Small Words, which is the intro song. It's played all the credits.
Oh yeah,
it loves
that song. That's definitely like the hit of the song of the movie.
This soundtrack bangs so goddamn hard.
It's pretty good.
Swear to God.
It's pretty good for like movie songs, you know.
I have listened to this soundtrack consistently. Luckily, it's all on Spotify. I have listened to the soundtrack a majority of the days when I'm heading into work because I just need some girl power. It's such a banger, legit. Every song in this goddamn soundtrack is great.
Yeah, I was surprised because normally when you do like music in movies and stuff, it does get a little bit like a lot of the time it's not that great. Mm-hmm. But it was pretty good in this film for the most part. I never had any issues with it. I could believe these girls would be famous, you know?
Yeah, I do think it's kind of one of those, like, as the girls are introduced, we kind of see, like, all of their kind of issues of the day of, like, how they're a failing band and they're not, like, getting many gigs in Riverdale. And, like, some of it's played for laughs, but you can tell that they really love what they do.
There's, like, a car full of mean girls that show up just to insult them as
of course. Now, that's the thing. As the kind of film introduces more characters who are Riverdale focused, I keep thinking, like, are these characters who show up in other things? Are they consistent townsfolk of the Riverdale universe? I don't know. Like, it's such an odd element to it that, yes, I suppose this is all happening while, I don't know, Jughead is saying his famous "I'm a weirdo" line. You never know.
Yeah, Jughead's somewhere in there, threatening in the background to appear. In the film.
Threatening is a good way to put it. But yeah, no, it's got like all of your classic kind of like 90s movie tropes. Like it's got like Josie and her friends are kind of poised to be like the not popular girls, and there's you're right, there's like three girls who are all dressed in pink who are like the popular girls of the town.
Yeah, they just
drive up in a pink Mercedes and like just decide to bully them out of nowhere. It's excellent.
Yeah,
like it's
they just roll up to shit on them and ruin their day.
Yeah, and they're all like done to the nines. They look like Bratz dolls. It's excellent.
It's very funny. It's because it's also juxtaposed to like the Josie crew all has like these really cobbled together crappy outfits with these bad cat ears and everything, and then they just get rolled up on and insulted.
It's great. Like the intro of the movie really sets up that kind of like small town Americana kind of we're bigger than this, girls. We can escape this small town kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Apologies if you can hear various planes over my house, but I'm not closing the window because it is very, very warm.
Least, but I guess I'll see in the recording. But yeah, it starts off with that, and then we immediately go to like Josie's like house and stuff because they all kind of just hang out at Josie's house. None of them have parents. First off.
No, I mean they seem to be kind of like 18, 21, like they're clearly all moved out at this point, and they're trying to like make their life like successful and stuff like that. They're kind of like trying to be artists, and they've got like a terrible agent already. I cannot remember his name, but
he's like the actor, garbage stoner dude that barely does his job and only gets them like shitty gigs.
Yes, but he has a sister played by Missy Pyle, who, if you watch these type of movies, you've seen 1,000 times. She is excellent.
She's also fantastic.
She eats every scene that she's in. She does not leave any scraps. She basically just plays like a bimbo asshole, and her role is pretty much just to bully the Pussycats, which is... It's so excellent because there is no need for her character. It is just it is just a character actor having fun.
Yeah,
there's no point of them in the film.
She's the tall girl from Eizouken.
What do you mean?
The
oh yes,
tall
I
girl
suppose,
who just kind of constantly will make like comments in the background.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
That's basically her role. No matter what they're doing, she'll make some snarky comment or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they also live in this like weird. I don't know if that's an actual house or if it's got to be a set.
Oh, it's not.
It's such
be a set.
It's wacky, that house.
Everything in this film is poised to be so unrealistic that it's the most set film I've ever seen in my life.
Their house almost looks like the goddamn Cat in the Hat movie. It's like this weird
That's another good shout.
House.
We could talk about Cat in the Hat at some point.
At some point, talk about the...
That's a horror movie.
Mike Myers,
that is a horror movie.
Cat in the Hat film.
Oh boy, excellent.
But yeah,
excellent
there was that. It reminded me a little bit of that in points, just because that movie is also fairly cartoony with it, even though it's like horrific in that film. It's not that bad in this one, but there are certain sets that look like basically cartoon sets, and Josie's house is kind of one of them. Everything about it is just kind of weird and ugly, but it's ugly in a really pretty way.
I do get like the feeling in some ways I kind of would have liked more of the film to still be in Riverdale, because pretty much the minute Alan Cumming finds the girl band and like sees potential in them as an act that they can kind of market and kind of make successful, you do leave Riverdale immediately, and like you go to like the big city. I think they just go to New York or something, or whatever city was cheapest to film in.
It's New York, but it's a really weird like hyper-capitalist version of New York that has all these like gigantic ads and stuff.
And let's face it, like none of it's real. None of it's actually set on location. Like.
Yeah, no, it's like it's a weird hyper-capitalist New York, but it's amazing. It looks like a weird RoboCop city or something, where everything's just filled with these giant billboards and brands everywhere.
It's like if Stan Twitter made Blade Runner 2047, more or less.
Yeah, more or less.
It's gay Blade Runner.
I will say it definitely. The thing I guess I appreciate about it is it takes like about 10 minutes for it to really get started. Like Alan Cumming's pretty quick to kind of discover them, and then he's like, all right, you guys have talent, and then they're in New York.
Yes, and then kind of the rest of the film then divulges into Alan Cumming attempting to change the band into what he wants, with the help of maybe the best actress in the film, the true legend that is Parker Posey. She basically plays this character called Fiona, who is Alan Cumming's boss, clearly the person who's in charge of this record label, and she basically steals every scene that she's in, because her entire gimmick is that while the girls are singing all of their songs and thinking that they're going to get really famous, turns out all of their songs are actually being used to sell products. It's very They Live. They put they put like not fake, they put over subliminal messages into all of their songs. And that is what this Fiona character has been doing with like people like Dojour, like other bands. She's basically been calculating media and pop culture for possibly years. It's never actually said how long it goes on for.
Yeah, it's not said, but it's basically the film boils down like they go from small town girls to being discovered, and then they fly to New York, and then they're kind of just having a little fashion montage as they go through all these places and stuff. But there's a bunch of like little things that pop up. One of which I remember is I guess the moment you really see it, the subliminal messaging thing is Alan Cumming goes into like a little record store and he has a song to put on. And it
Yes.
makes everybody in the thing all of a sudden be like, oh, I really want something orange right now to wear. And then all of a sudden you see this like shifting running gag of like, there are certain stores that go from like selling things that are, you know, selling records or whatever else to just selling like orange outfits and orange shirts and stuff.
It basically, like, all the kind of marketing in the film boils down to things can change in a second, and there's this, like, recurring joke that, like, someone is drinking a Pepsi, and they go, God, I love Pepsi, and then, like, you hear one of Josie's songs, and then they go, oh, God, Pepsi, who needs that? Sprite is the new Pepsi, and then, like, they throw the Pepsi in the trash, and then they run, like, deranged to like the Sprite store.
Yeah,
and
that's
pretty much
it. Yeah, the subliminal messages just immediately make you want to
Yes.
to go buy stuff.
During that scene, we would be remiss to not mention it. Basically, there's realistically there's probably like 8 sets in this film. It's an expensive looking film, but when you really break down it, there's a lot of scenes that play out over and over again.
Yeah.
But there's this very large kind of mall interior set where Alan Cumming kind of goes to consistently to give people, like the people at the record store the new hit track, and then that's what changes kind of culture and people's ideas of what they should buy. But in this scene, every single time it cuts back to Alan Cumming talking, there is an inexplicable Sega Dreamcast themed display behind him.
They love Dreamcast.
And it is the biggest, most glaring thing I've ever seen, to a point where I stood up in my stoned ass stupor watching this film and screamed, is that fucking Knights?
There was Knights, there was Space Channel 5.
There's Space Channel 5, Knights. I thought it was Ikaruga, but it was Crazy Taxi. There was just so much, and it was all Sega themed.
The fact that they didn't receive any advertising for it, and they specifically chose the Dreamcast, to me, backs up my theory that I think they're just really big Sega fans.
Yeah, a dying console already on launch. Like, they decided... I mean, to be honest, if at any point Alan Cumming had walked over and I saw a standee of Ryo from Shenmue, I think I actually would have just been in heaven.
That would have been great. They should have just had a Ryu there, a Ryo. That would have been the cherry on top of this film. But yeah, no, I love all the Sega advertising, because there's specifically a very big one later that we'll mention when it does come up that I like saw and lost my shit because it's so dumb. It doesn't make any sense for Sega to be that big, but
no,
it's great.
Not at all.
They just love Sega.
Because the thing is, like, you could argue that this kind of like us finding the Sega stuff being planted in the background is the film working, like it marketing itself.
Yeah.
But it's because the film is so direct about saying how stupid these things are and how clear marketing is, and how, like, as I mentioned They Live earlier, it's clear that They Live is a pretty prime example. Because, like, there's multiple times when people in the film will, like, stop hearing the actual music and they'll only hear the subtitles behind it.
Yeah.
And it's very They Live. Like, it's like you take off the sunglasses and you can see all of the strings being pulled, and you can see all the alien faces.
Yeah, there's also there's a scene, I think, in that same scene where, like, there's one goth girl who just doesn't like the music.
Yes.
And it isn't for whatever reason working on her. And Alan Cummings like, hey, can I borrow you for a second? There's something I need to ask you. And then he just immediately stuffs her into, like, a van.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's a very direct film in a lot of ways. Like a cartoon. Like, it's not asking questions to be...
It's totally cartoon logic the entire way through.
100%. So I would be remiss, like, to not mention, like, obviously this is a film about music. And as the film goes on, like, it goes through, like, the highs and lows of these girl band, and, like, them being manipulated by Alan Cumming, them kind of being
pretty much right away. There's like after they get picked up by Alan Cumming, after they kind of do like a tour to go shopping and change their looks, there's like a billboard they see where before it was sort of Josie's band, they were all sort of equal members. They have a billboard that's named Josie and the Pussycats, and like the other two girls are very off-put by that, and that's sort of the start of the wedge between them. That only sort of grows
and
throughout the film.
You can tell that is implemented early because Alan Cumming kind of wants to make Josie the main lead because she's the most easily kind of manipulated by. She, like, the other two, Tara Reid isn't a issue because her character's entire personality is
so
ditzy
dumb.
girl.
Yeah,
she's my favorite
she's
character
great.
in this movie, other than Fiona, by the way. Absolutely adore the energy that Tara Reid brought into this entire
she's great.
project.
The other two, Tara Reid and I want to remember her name here, Rosario Dawson,
yeah.
Valerie. Melody and Valerie are like, I don't know if you noticed it while watching it, but there are like constant scenes where they're like sitting on each other's laps.
There's a,
and, like,
yeah,
holding
I definitely
hands.
got some energy from this film, I will say. Like,
Yeah.
there's some definite bisexual vibes going around with the entire cast, to be honest.
There sure is. But yeah, with
And it's
them,
really sweet, though. Like, it's not poised to be, like, a fetish or anything. It's not, like, poised to be, like, gross. It's like, no, these girls are all, like, very comfortable with each other. And if there is, like, a connection between them, whatever.
Would not be surprised if one of the writers on this film was queer or something.
Yeah.
Because it feels like
100%.
definitely like a background element that was added as like a... It's subtle. Like, if you were not looking for it, you wouldn't notice. But if you do, you can see them being very, like, touchy and they'll, like, sit on each other's laps. And they often look at each other very reverential, very, like,
those two
affectionately.
characters in particular, yeah, there's a definite kind of closeness between the two of them. Rachel Lee Cook's character, like, as Josie, she's probably the least interesting of my opinion because her entire plotline is basically... 1, she wants to be famous. 2, she loves her friends.
Yeah.
And 3, she has a possible boyfriend who's an idiot who does not realize that she has the biggest crush in the world with him.
I love how little the movie cares about that, though.
Yeah, it really, like, it's a very sweet ending what they give those two characters.
I don't
but
want to jump too far ahead to the ending with
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
and we'll get to that when it does, but I do love how little that matters throughout the entire film.
No, it really doesn't. Like, it's clearly presented to be like, this will become an issue later because he's not famous and she's getting famous and blah, blah, blah. But you really forget about him quite early.
Yeah.
He's kind of poised to be kind of like a Shaggy character, like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. He's kind of stonery and he's kind of like ditzy and stupid. He's like a proto-himbo, more or less.
Yeah, a little bit.
But yeah, I think we should just kind of skip towards like when the film really starts getting going. Basically, as the film continues, it then becomes a investigation almost into Alan Cumming and Parker Posey's weird kind of domination of all pop culture through subliminal messaging. The US government gets involved into it.
They're like selling this technology to the US government.
Mm-hmm. Which is, again, terrible idea. Imagine just going to the government and being like, we've been brainwashing children in your state for decades.
There was also like the Japanese guy. There was like a whole bunch of world government people there, and they're just like, haha, we've been doing evil things. Would you like this technology? And they're just like, oh yeah, that seems pretty interesting.
There's this excellent moment that like really points out Parker Posey's genius of delivery, where she's talking to this American general, and she keeps like thinking that she's won this kind of like selling point to him about this technology, and she turns around and goes, "Finally, my plan will happen." And then the general is just like, "You're not whispering. I can hear you."
It's just like, what plan? What?
What are you talking about?
They can
It's
just
such
hear
a good
the
misdirection.
whole time, and like every time she manages to like explain her way out of it, she'll then turn around and be like, "Ah, yes, they didn't see my true intentions," and then they'll just be like, What do you mean your true intention?
It's so
for
good.
Like a minute or two of just her digging herself into a hole.
Parker Posey's character attempts. She's basically like poised to be this kind of absolute freak, but also like a villainess. She's very like she has a lot of sides to the camera and stuff like this. But because the film is kind of cartoony and plays with the fourth wall, consistently, it makes this really good dynamic between her and everyone that is around her, that they're like, what are you doing? You keep talking to the camera. There's no camera.
Yeah.
What are you... like, it's so good.
Wild, too, because... So basically, there's that where they're selling their secrets to the government. That happens basically after the girls get sent to New York. They get put up in this, first off, this huge hotel room that's a Target hotel. The whole hotel room has these, like, Target advertising mints everywhere. There's a McDonald's shower that just has a big McDonald's logo.
Shower.
I believe it's the AOL hotel as well. There's like a big hotel there, and that just has AOL on the top of it, which I lost my shit at when I saw it, because it's like that company doesn't exist anymore.
I adore it that gone. There's a scene where Rachel Lee Cook is kind of getting dressed to go out for the night. And it's either her or Tara Reid, and they're like doing their hair, and just inexplicably on like a nightstand, there's a massive box of Tide Pods just sitting there, and I'm just like, what is going on?
Yeah, it's so it's so blatant. I love it.
It's excellent,
but
it's camp. Yeah, it's absolute camp.
After they
it's
get
so
settled
good.
in, there's a scene after that where Parker Posey is sort of selling stuff to the government. There's like a scene after where she meets the girls for the first time, and the girls meet her, and their reaction to it is they're just fucking weirded out, because she's so weird, and like the movie acknowledges it. She's like bizarre, and she like doesn't have any social cues. She's just weird, and that you don't understand why for so long.
It's such an even when it is revealed why she is the way she is, it makes no sense.
Yeah, no, she's just like this weirdo. She's like this weird cartoon character that understands she's in a cartoon while everybody else doesn't.
Yes, and like there's the scene that you're talking about. Basically, the three girls go to like a big party that Parker Posey is hosting, and this is the first time the four of them have met, and then she brings them into like this massive pink Barbie doll room that she calls the girl room, and she starts asking if they can braid each other's hair and tell each other secrets about boys. And like this is Parker Posey, like she is not a teenage girl. She's not even in her 20s.
No, she's like a 30-year-old.
Like late 30s. And she's asking to do all these things. And like in that scene, I believe I texted you. I was like, this, number one, this is gay rights. But two, this is what I want the Barbie movie to be.
Oh yeah.
And I do think
I want the Barbie movie to be exactly this in terms of like how
the Barbie movie. The Barbie movie is a real last bastion and hope for this attempt at camp to come back into cinema. And I've really seen a general like swelling of support for the Barbie movie.
I think
not just from the queer space, but from a lot of people who are just kind of passionate about cinema, because there's something about that film that people have rallied behind and supported and are kind of feverish to hear more about. In a way that I'm really happy, and like it plays into the same stuff of like me and you have talked about this kind of post-COVID madness that has taken over a lot of film productions, whereas like the Barbie movie and like the Joker film being a gay musical featuring
absolutely insane.
Lady Gaga.
That Lady Gaga is in that film, and that it's going to be a musical.
Quite frankly, some of the most insane films that I've ever heard, like on paper.
I still need to see that Elvis film. Everything I've seen about it looks so fan.
Yeah.
Every clip I have seen looks wild.
Yes, I have seen the Elvis film, and I really do have to say that I'm a Baz Luhrmann fan. I think some of his work's pretty good. I actually thought like Great Gatsby is alright, and I think Moulin Rouge is a pretty good film as well. The Elvis film, something really happened with Baz at that point that I think Baz has changed his like mental state to think that fictional people and real people are the same thing.
Yeah, it's true.
I remember a friend of mine sent me a out of context clip from the opening scene of Elvis, and he just asked, "Is this actually what the film is like? Like, this can't be real. This has to be an edit." And I was like, no.
Is that the he's white scene or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah. I saw that scene recently, and I need to see that film. I've been waiting for it to show up on like digital so I can finally see it.
I definitely can't say that I would recommend it, because I remember I went to go see it. Me and my boyfriend went to go see it, and I remember not halfway through, like after we both came out, I was just like, I was so tired. I was exhausted. And like the only thing that like came in my mind is like, is this just going to be a genre now? Like, because realistically it is just a biopic. But is there just going to be a genre of like really deranged, fictionalized biopics about reality TV stars? Not reality TV stars, what I'm saying, like reality pop stars, like true culture, that have just become this kind of weird joke or like parody. And you could argue that like something like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood does the same thing with like the Sharon Tate stuff, but I mean, it's made by a pervert, so it's got that issue as well.
It does have that issue.
I do think a lot of like these type of movies that like are presenting kind of like biopics or narratives about like Hollywood and classic Hollywood or classic like movie stars, they were still real people. They still existed. Like,
yeah,
it's not like they have turned into these kind of legends. They're still like modern history, you know what I mean? But we are getting very off topic.
Yeah. We definitely are. But no, yeah, I get what you're saying, though. A lot of movies are finally starting to have some of this energy back, but this particular film, it has that energy. It's very high energy. It's very cartoony. It understands what it is, and it's not trying to take itself seriously at all through it. So you get little scenes like that Parker Posey one. And I think that one's followed up with a scene of Alan Cumming and Parker Posey sitting on that like pink heart bed and like just plotting evil schemes together for like a minute, and it's glorious.
Again, set design on point. Every set is just like
every single scene is. I was just pausing it to look at the background and be like, what is going on with these sets? They're so good. So realistically, like as the film goes on, it does kind of present this kind of rift within the three girls' friendship and like the group's friendship. Yes, because they start to Josie starts to be given like Alan Cumming gives her like a CD to listen to.
Yes.
To be like, hey, that you should try sounding more like this or whatever. But it has like these subliminal messages that start to make her kind of shitty to her friends.
Yes, pretty much. It brainwashes her to an extent, more or less.
Yeah, and she starts to become like this kind of stuck up musician, and eventually she sort of becomes worse and worse and like more stuck up. I believe there's a point where she doesn't go to her boyfriend's show even, and then at some point she just completely stops talking to the Pussycats and tries to cut them out. Pretty much,
like there is a point, more or less. It pretty much becomes there's like an almost fight scene between Rachel Lee Cook, Tara Reid, and Rosario Dawson. It's clearly like the climax of the film. It's like the beginning of the third act, where the three of them are having this big fight, and Rachel Lee Cook really, absolutely serves every single thing that she could in this scene.
Oh yeah,
like she eats the villain role so well to a point where I was kind of like, I kind of wish Rachel Lee Cook played the mean girl more, because she's actually really good at it.
She's very good at it. I was surprised at how well she slipped into it.
Because Rachel Lee Cook, her kind of filmography from my memory, she was always kind of like the girl next door. She was not like other girls.
Yes, I believe she's in American Pie as like the girl next door. She's very.
What are you
normal.
talking about?
Is she not like is she not in American Pie?
No, she is not in American Pie. I cannot remember that actress's name, but Rachel Lee Cook is known. Rachel Lee Cook is known best for She's All That, which was another. It was her and Freddie Prinze Jr. and it was a movie about basically Freddie Prinze Jr. Making her into like the popular girl, more or less. Like he had a bet with his friends that he could make her the hot girl. again, a bizarre idea, because Rachel Lee Cook, even in that film, when they attempt to make her look scruffy, like, they put her hair in a bun and, like, give her glasses, but she's still this beautiful, like, Hollywood star, and it's like, oh god, she's so repulsive. And then, like, it cuts back and she's absolutely gorgeous. That would be a good choice as well. She's All That is a really fun flick. It has it's a real it's a real perfect encapsulation of, like, late 90s, early 2000s rom-com, like teenage rom-com, more or less. It's a really good example of that. For a part of my thesis in college, I basically had to watch countless rom-coms from, like, teenage kind of genre, more or less. So there was a good year and a half where I basically just watched nothing but teenage American rom-coms. Would not recommend you do that, because it does do a number on your brain.
Yeah, no, that doesn't sound so good.
Listen, like, damn, I've become yassified to a point of my last brain thought at this point. The only thing keeping me going is iced coffee. But
yeah,
realistically, like,
after she does that, though, is that when she's like, hey, I think she's like, hey, or no, it was Alan Cumming, after they have this fight. Alan Cumming comes in and he gives the girls an invitation to an interview with one of the most dated references in this film, perhaps. Carson Daly.
So, this is, honestly, this might be the best scene in the movie. So, Tara Reid and Rosario Dawson walk into what I could only describe as a, like, gay 90s, producer's wet dream, which is they walk into a fake version of TRL. So
I guess before we get into that, we should say, so they're having, like, this fight, and in order to make up for it, Alan Cumming sends them on this interview to be like, go to this interview, we still like you, you're still part of the group. Josie is just going through some stuff right now, and then they get sent to basically what they think is an interview. And then,
with Carson Daly on TRL. But what little do they know, they arrive at this fictional version of TRL. They basically walk into a parking lot, more or less, that has cardboard cutout versions of not only the entire set of TRL, including cardboard cutouts of all of the cameras, all of the sound recording stuff, but it cuts over and you can see a fake audience that is one part filled with cardboard cutouts of just random people, but also, like, popular actors and actresses and pop stars in real life. Like, you can see, like, a cutout version of, like, Eminem and like Michael Jackson,
like
Britney Spears.
Everybody who's, like, anybody was just put in there randomly.
So good. I swear to you, see, like, a young Kanye. It's such an excellent choice. And then, like, you think, okay, this is clearly, like, basically Alan Cumming has set up this fake version of TRL, and he's attempting to basically off the two girls because he thinks that they are not needed anymore, and Rachel Lee Cook is the one who will take over the Josie band as just Josie. Little in your brain, like, you're probably like, okay, they're probably going to be, like, killed by, like, some random thugs or whatever. Motherfucking Carson
Daly.
Daly.
They fake you out with it first because a random dude does show up.
Yeah, some guy shows up pretending to be Carson Daly, and it's like, you're not Carson Daly, what are you doing? And then...
Yeah, he turns around to the corner. It's Carson
Daly. Carson Daly, the original foot of a man, walks out into this soundstage, and they're like, oh my god, Carson, that's incredible, you're actually here, I'm your biggest fan. Because, like, at this point, the girls are still, like, Midwestern, like, simple girls. They're really fangirling. And then Carson Daly just takes out a gun, or, like, a bat. No, he takes out a bat. He takes out a baseball bat. And so does the other version of him. And then they just are like, we're gonna kill you.
Yeah.
Oh, and then basically, like, the like double of Carson Daly goes after Rosario Dawson, and Tara Reid and Carson Daly start flirting with each other while he's trying to kill her. It's so good.
It's fantastic, and they're like smashing up the set and shit too, and like smashing up the celebrity cutouts and stuff.
It's so good, and like making jokes about each of the cutouts as he's smashing their heads off.
Carson Daly did he made a Bill Cosby reference, little bit dated.
Yeah, really dated. A lot. Again, this is a dated film in general.
It's surprisingly not dated in some ways, but there are elements.
No.
Because a lot of comedies
pop culture
of this
wise,
type
it has
do
to
not hold up half as well as this does. There's like two or three scenes that I can think of that are like a little bit dated, probably wouldn't fly today. That Bill Cosby joke,
absolutely.
probably one of them, but...
And I do think, like, obviously this film, your mileage may vary depending on your taste level and, like, what you perceive as, like, a good form of comedy and parody and camp, and, like, all of these things are, like, just kind of simple ways of me saying, listen, you either get it or you get it, or you don't, all right? Like, this was made for the gays, this was made for the girlies. And it served camp and it served puss. And that's what it did. And you either get it or you don't. Like that's all there is to say about this genre realistically.
Yeah, that's pretty apt. It's very much it has grown a cult following, I think, especially in gay communities, because it's very queer, like very surprisingly queer. In some elements, it's not explicit about it or anything, but it's very like girly. It's having fun. It's bubbly. It's refreshing.
It's irreverent. It's silly. It plays. It like plays jokes
unabashedly
on like traditional stuff.
A girls' rock film.
Yeah, and like as I said earlier, like you can really tell between the three main leads, like they were having their absolute time of their life, and it really plays into the characters' kind of opinions of their own music as well. You can really see real joy on like and having fun between the three girls. Like and as you said, like I remember when I first finished this, you said like you can tell that every single person who was in this film is having the time of their life, more or less.
Yeah. No, them running around that Carson Daly set, smashing shit up.
So good.
They're having a blast with that. Especially like going around flirting and stuff. It's
so good. Like Tara Reid she is a cultural reset in this movie. I swear to God, she does this like excellent. Like Tara Reid in general was like really known for like kind of being the ditzy blonde in a lot of her films, but there's this weird kind of like almost. She is ditzy and she is like really silly, and she's really kind as well to everyone that she knows, but there's also this weird wisdom behind a lot of what she says.
She'll just so every so often say something that's like really smart, but it doesn't do like the Marvel movie quip thing of making a big deal about it. She'll just like randomly say something smart, and then everybody moves on or like ignores it. Because she's like a ditzy girl and nobody really pays attention to her.
Pretty much. Yeah, and like you can see that fun kind of like not only blend through, like obviously its script is great, but like its soundtrack is really filled with like a lot of energy and like a lot of care and attention put into it, and like it really does genuinely sound like a girl band who like have actually made their own music. You said, what is the actual name of the woman who actually sung the
so
parts?
I need to I was gonna pull that up probably towards the end scene, but
we are pretty close to the end, like realistically.
Yes, so one of the fun things that I was going to mention, let me see if I can find my note here, but so one of the fun things is okay, so one of the fun things about this film is anytime they're playing instruments, basically they had to go to a band camp, right, at some point, to sort of look accurate while playing these instruments. So they went to this band camp to learn how to play music. However, they did not learn how to be proficient enough to actually do their own music. So
no, of course.
Yeah,
of course not. Like these are three actresses; they're not going to have the time to learn all of this.
Yes. So my understanding is it was I have to figure out who actually provided the actual sounds, because it's just listed as like studio musicians. My understanding is they pulled it from a few different places. Let me see if I can find this. Time to cut all this out. And it's got to be listed though, in terms of like if I look up the soundtrack. Well,
I know I definitely found.
Hanley seems to be the one listed for a lot of it.
Okay.
Kay Handley.
So, Hey Hanley is the name. Is that the singer?
I'm trying to see here in terms of this. Oh, there's like a bunch of people on these.
Oh, damn.
Three Small Worlds. Deborah Kaplan, Henry Effort, and Dave Gibbs. Dave Gibbs, I guess, is the musician.
Okay.
Dave Gibbs, Juggalo Aunts. Or Gigolo Aunts? I don't know how to say that. Yeah, not... I guess he worked on Rock of Ages, too.
Oh.
So I think he might just be like a studio musician who helps with like soundtracks for these things. But it doesn't look like it's any particular band. I don't recognize anybody on this. It seems like
from
the
my
music
understanding
was written by Kaplan and Elfront, who are the director writer duo.
Okay.
So it's at least written by them, or some of it is. Three Small Worlds is, for instance, written by them with the help of that Dave Gibbs fella. But Gibbs is probably the person that I'm seeing here that looks like he was kind of credited the most, at least.
And what is the singer?
That part... I'm just seeing the writers. Let's see here. Lead vocals... It looks like... Maybe she was the singer.
What do you mean?
Josie is just
Rachel
listed
Cook?
as
No,
the singer.
She can't be, because I googled this and found out. Hang on.
Why
it's
Josie
not Rachel
just
Cook. It definitely isn't.
To the singer. Rachel Lee lip sync most of the film.
Yeah, there you go.
The songs were performed by Kay Hanley.
There we go. Okay.
Letters to Cleo
Kay Hanley
is what she's known
for. Absolute like pouring out for Kay Hanley. She brought so much energy to this goddamn movie, I swear to God. And like the three girls do a great job lip syncing.
She did the sound. She worked on the soundtrack for Sonic Heroes.
Yeah! No way! Holy shit!
That's okay.
What does she provide for that?
Good question. I'm now very interested to find out about the soundtrack there. That's fascinating. That she
the true sound of Sonic.
Wow, okay, yeah, I have to figure out exactly what she did there. But yeah, apparently she worked on Sonic Heroes to some things. She was also a backup singer for Hannah Montana.
Oh, cool.
So she's done a bunch of stuff, apparently, it looks like.
Yeah.
Just a whole bunch of... Kai wrote a song. Oh, Follow Me! That's her! Holy shit! She worked on Follow Me.
Wait, how? As in, like, she really didn't sing
co-wrote and performed on it.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
She I guess, had some hand in that to some degree. So, yeah. She's kind of been in everything. It seems like most of these, though, are kind of like... They're not big band-named musicians or anything. It's mostly studio musicians who are, like, those type of background people who work on soundtracks like these.
Like, Josie and the Pussycats as a band were never going to be marketed in reality as real singers, because they don't exist, because they just never would be. Whereas, like, obviously you have films that are about pop stars or about groups. Spice Girls, Spice World, yes, that is a rare example. But usually these things do not coalesce completely. Whereas, like, yes, if you were, I suppose, to the untrained eye, if you were to watch this film, you'd be like, wow, Rachel Lee Cook is really talented. She's not a singer. Like, she's an actress.
Yeah.
There's a very big difference between those two. So, like, the thing about this movie's soundtrack is, realistically, obviously it was made probably in somewhat of a kind of microcosm. They wouldn't have seen the entire thing before it and all this. But it really does work. Like, the whole soundtrack works so well in unison together.
From what I'm seeing looking up this stuff, it's very much like... I mean, there's a lot of writing credits, a lot of talents on it. So it does seem like like, again, this thing had a $40 million budget, and a lot of that seems to have just been pulling people in for the rewrites on these, because looking at some of the credits for these songs, there's like 5 or so people listed, 5 to 8 people listed generally per each of the tracks in it, and it's like, they probably put a lot of money into making that part sound good, because it does sound really good for one of these movies. That's normally like something that, with musical films or films about singers or groups or bands or whatever, my most common complaint is they'll go to sing like their quote-unquote big song, and it sucks. Where I didn't really think that any of the songs in this were that bad. None of them hung. None of them were like, I'm tired of this song, I don't want to hear it. They were all, for the most part, pretty fun. They worked, and they were kind of just a blast to listen through.
Yeah, I really think they kind of picked up this great kind of, I suppose, kind of girl band, girl rock kind of energy that was definitely prevalent in the late 90s, and like it really, really, obviously it's not literally Hole, but it's definitely Hole inspired. And like, like Three Small Worlds, Pretend to Be Nice, Shapeshifter, these are absolute bangers, legit. If I can tell anyone who's listening to this, go listen to that soundtrack. It good. Actually still holds up.
It's fairly good.
But again, like as the film goes through, you see all these different songs. You kind of get to know the girls, and then
after they kill Carson Daly,
after they
after they kill Carson Daly, there's like do we see him after, or is Carson Daly assumed to be killed?
I think Carson is seen at one point, but he's wearing a neck brace.
Yeah, he's like fucked up, because they basically the girls win the fight there at some point,
more or less.
And then they escape just in time to find out that I guess like Josie was going to perform this big show for an audience at a big stadium that was sold out without them. So she was going to do like a big solo show.
Yeah,
and. At that point, the movie sort of becomes them rushing back to Josie and then getting Josie to realize, hey, you're being brainwashed and you've kind of become shitty.
Yeah, and then the two of them are basically kidnapped by Alan Cumming. Josie, from my memory of it, does kind of just come to her senses because I think she falls over.
Yeah,
she's just walking. Oh yeah, I will say. There's a scene, so there's a scene where she's fully brainwashed at this point and she's listening to her song, her new like big popular song that is just pumping out kind of brainwashing thoughts into her head. She is walking around New York holding a CD player, which is the most God, when we had to do that,
carry around a CD player with you at all times. Clip it into like the side of your pants so it's hanging off.
Hope to God it doesn't fall. Like
every single step you take, it skips a little bit.
God, we really were living like monsters. The other day in my job, someone came in and asked if they could sell a CD player. And the youngest girl who works there didn't know what a CD player was, and I was like, "Oh God, oh no,
oh no!" It's we who've become the boomers now.
But so she falls over while listening to her massive CD player attached to her pants.
CD player.
And through that, she is broken out of her. Clearly, at that point, they didn't know how to write a reason why she isn't brainwashed anymore, so they were just like, make her fall
Good
over, it's fine.
For me.
And she when she drops her CD player, she starts to realize that she can hear the brainwashing through it, and then she like does some audio editing and realizes that she can actually just hear kind of like the backing track, which has the hypnosis in it. And then she's like, oh god, I have to tell people about this. This is the worst. And then as the third act kind of closes, as the second act closes and we go into the third act, Fiona and Alan Cumming have kidnapped both of the other members, and they're like, listen, you have to sing one last time for us at the sold out show. or your friends will die, basically. And then that is kind of what is set up to be the end of the movie. That immediately is dropped because the girls are just like, fuck this.
Yeah,
and then just a fight scene happens.
It's like
which is
a
great.
fight scene, but barely, because none of these people are physically capable
no,
of doing anything.
But it's
so really the Pussycats
scene...
just escape, and they're like,
pretty much. Yeah, more or less. And like Rosario Dawson and Tara Reid see Josie, and they're like, "You sold us out. Why would we be your friend?" And then there's like a really sweet scene where, like Rachel Lee Cook, legitimately, you can tell that she's actually quite like invested in this character, and she tells this like really sweet story about the three of them.
Put them in like a spinning car through this entire scene.
Yeah, of course. They're like, you could win this car.
Yeah, there's like one of those
like
mall cars, and the two Pussycats are just like circling around on that during this.
It's great. And like she's running around the car like as it's spinning, trying to tell this story. It's so good. Like it's such camp, but it's told from such a sweet angle of like it is at the end of the day, as much as like these three people are kind of corrupted by capitalism and like marketing and all this stuff, they are still friends. They still do have these memories, and they still do have this love of music.
That's the thing I particularly like, because I'm not normally a person who likes plot lines that boil down to, oh, this character did a bad thing, and now I'm going to hold it against them forever and be upset. The way that scene goes is Josie sort of just explains what's going on, and while they're apprehensive, they pretty quickly accept it. And then they all work together to kind of escape their situation.
Mm-hmm. And I think it works. Like, it's a good third act. It's not a reveal because everything has been revealed at this point. It's a third act apology that is grounded in sentimentality, which is really sweet. Like, obviously you could say like, oh, it's the friends we found along the way, but in a film that is kind of talks about how toxic kind of modern pop culture is, and how like everything is consumerist and everything can be replaceable. At the end of the day, this friendship is more important.
Yeah, I really like that it just ends with the message of that versus like a weird situation where it's like, it could have been a darker thing where it's like the girls split up or something like that, but instead it's just like they're back, they realize that their friendship is more important than capitalism. And that's sort of the main thing at the end of the movie here. The main lesson is like, hey, treat those around you that are close well, you know?
Pretty much. And that's a deeply relatable thing in modern society, realistically. Which is, it's very sweet, and it's a very nice message towards the end of the film. And like, basically after that, Fiona and Alan Cumming are outed to be fakes this whole time.
Yeah.
They've, like, what is it? Like, Fiona is kicked in the teeth, and then it turns out she has a horrible lisp her entire life.
She has a speech impediment, which does slip out every so often in the film.
Yeah.
Like, every so often throughout this, she'll just randomly talk with a lisp, and it's not explained until this moment, where it's found out she has a speech impediment. Which is part of why she is so weird in terms of like how she interacts with people, because she never interacted with a ton of people growing up or anything.
Yeah, she was bullied and stuff like that.
It kind of retroactively explains it a little bit that like, oh yeah, she's socially awkward because of this, because she just assumed nobody would ever accept her for who she was. And then you find out Alan Cumming is more or less the same. You find out that his accent is fake.
Yeah.
He's just an American dude.
He's been wearing a toupee the whole movie. He's actually bald. Like,
there's like a back and forth where it goes on, and they each have like secrets of like, oh yeah, my hair is fake, or I have this stomach I've been hiding behind this corset or whatever. I like that reveal because it is about acceptance in a way. However, I do not like so much that some of it is physical based. Like, a lot of it is just, oh, I'm fat or whatever. But I don't...
This is my problem, But that was a real thing in the 90s.
It was.
Remember that, like, being, like, size 0 slim was the thing, and if you were in any way not that... I mean, recently me and my friends were talking about the Austin Powers franchise.
Yeah.
My God. I attempted to watch that first one, or the second one, I can't remember which one it was, like 2 years ago. It did just get to a point where I was like, I cannot stand everything that Fat Bastard is saying.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to stop watching this film, because that was kind of the peak of comedy at that point.
The stuff with Alan Cumming in particular, like, it's not that offensive. It's not really offensive at all in comparison to any other comedy film at the time, in which it would just be like, here's a fat character, laugh at him. His thing is more, he's like, he's just sort of ugly, but it's still cute in that, both Alan Cumming and what's her name? I just forgot it for some reason.
Posey
Parker. They both accept each other, and they're just like, oh yeah, we love hanging out and being evil together, so they're just fine with it. They're totally cool with each other. They just love evil scheming together.
It's clear their friendship with the reveals towards of like their physical kind of differences it's definitely played to be like, capitalist culture has turned us all into hyper consumerist, hyper image obsessed people, and like we need to break down these barriers and stuff like that. I get it, but you are right a little bit. It is like, aha, the evil ones were fat and ugly all along. It's like, okay. Yeah, we get it.
It's pretty quick though. That gets wrapped up in about a minute. It's not as bad as like a Fat Bastard situation here.
No, I legitimately don't think anything ever will be.
It's not as bad as some comedy movies where it gets uncomfortable. It kind of like has the reveal and then it moves on quickly. It moves on quickly after that, and then they go up on the stage to perform basically their last song together of the film. Josie and the Pussycats. What's the song there that ends it? Is it literally just called
Josie think it's Shapeshifter. I think it was Shapeshifter, and I think Josie and the Pussycats plays over the end credits.
That might be correct.
I think so. I can't really remember. It doesn't matter. They are interchangeable in the sense of they are all great, so it doesn't realistically matter what they would have played. But Josie has this great line where she like looks out at the audience and she realizes that everyone's kind of mimicking her and doing the exact same thing she's doing, like while she's like strumming her guitar, and then she like just like looks into the camera and says like, this is gonna be our last song. It's new and it's different, and I hope yous all either like it or hate it, but at least have your own opinion about it. Because the reason why she's saying that is because it is the only song that these people have ever heard that hasn't had the kind of backing track of the hypnosis to it.
Yeah, they like destroyed the machine that was supplying the hypnosis that was going to brainwash them previous to this after defeating the villains.
Yeah, and you can really tell that like she's kind of exasperated by this point. She's tired. She's glad she has her friends back, but she's like, she hates what's happened to music, and she's just like, listen, it doesn't matter if this is bad or this is good. It matters that it's actually genuine and you can have a realistic reaction to it. And lo and behold, like obviously it's the ending of a movie. Everyone loves it. It's a banger. Her boyfriend shows up and like asks her to marry him or go out or whatever, and it's really sweet.
Yeah,
it's all played very nicely.
He shows up and he's like, hey, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I like you a lot.
And she's like, obviously,
like,
obviously, you fucking idiot. Like the whole movie I've been saying this, but no, it's really sweet, and you can tell like there's no like all the kind of like malice behind like, oh no, you didn't come to my fucking show that one time. It was like none of that really matters by the end because they still care.
It's kind of like resolved because it doesn't hang on that or make it a big thing. Just like when the girls had to learn that she was being brainwashed, it doesn't hang on it and make it this long played out thing. They just sort of find out and then they're like, oh, okay. That's what was happening. Because they're friends. Because
like they're friends, yes, but also like it is a comedy, like cartoon film. They could not hang on that because it would become unbearable.
Oh yeah, it would be.
Some films do that, and it's unbearable.
Yeah. It manages to negate that. We should also say, first off, when they do that romantic sequence with her boyfriend, there is a point where like he's like crowd surfing, and there's a point I think where they just drop it.
Yeah, it's great.
And like
that whole, to be honest, the whole like last scene is so triumphant.
It is.
And like it's very sweet. It's great. Like you can really tell that it's like we won, but also like yes, capitalism still exists. Yes, all this kind of stuff still exists. But like at least these three people have made something. They've made their friendship. Josie has has her boyfriend now. Like they've all kind of come to where they wanted to be. Will they continue to be a band? Who knows? Will they take over the world? Who knows? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's not really
because
important.
They're realistically at the end of the day, they are having fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the nicest part about it. Yes, is it simple? Yes. Are we simple? Yes. Are we gay? Yes.
Yeah, no, it's
nice.
very much a message that's nothing about it is particularly deep. The message essentially is just treasure your friendships and be yourself. But
pretty much.
That's very nice to hear from a movie.
And it's obviously like a sentiment that exists in a lot of these types of movies, and like we'll talk about it as we go on with this series. But like, it's a feel-good ending. God forbid a comedy actually be nice and like have characters that enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, it's just fun
and
the entire time. And there's also, we didn't mention
really...
it, but the Coliseum at the end they do the big show at, it's a fucking Sega Coliseum too.
Yeah, baby!
It's Sega sponsored. Of course it is.
Sega
they
sponsored.
Just love Sega.
As they should.
And my understanding is apparently they had some like Canadian boy band there to play music between takes so that they could like get that audience in there.
Oh, that's cool.
To do the shot. So it was like every time there was a take, this Canadian boy band would then go play a song.
Who knows? Who knows who they were? But good for them.
Whoever they are, God bless.
Yeah, no, it's... And then, like, you know, the film ends, great message. Shockingly, the film actually has outtakes of the credits. Remember those?
Oh, I do, and they're
Remember? I do miss that about movies. Like, nowadays, all you have to do when you watch a movie is you see it, and then you wait 8 minutes until you see a after credits scene that no one likes, and then
but
you
it
go
has
home.
a character. It's an ad for the next movie.
Yay!
Go see the next one. That's it. That's what movies have become now.
Go see the next one.
It's pretty. I mean, that is like they've all become like 3-hour movies that are advertisements now, which kind of sucks. I
pretty much.
like it.
And yes, you can argue the fucking the idea of us making that joke, and then this movie is literally just making jokes about ads and like culture and stuff. But hey, at least it's self-aware.
So there's a few things. So that's basically our sum up of the film. But there's a few things to note. One, as mentioned before, this thing bombed when it came out, and part of the reason it bombed is because at the time in the culture, it was viewed as this grandiose ad-filled movie that was like, it was too blatant. It was gross about how much advertising it was in it. There was a general perception that it was like this weird money grab, which is wild because you watch it and it's so obviously a critique of capitalism and like the hyper monetary focused culture of America at the time. Like, it's so obviously a critique of that, and somehow that was missed.
There is a clear element to a lot of this type of film, and their success or not. A lot of people, and I'm just going to say it, a lot of the straights do not appreciate camp. They do not understand it. They think the idea of camp means it's tacky and bad. And they think the removal of realism in a lot of media is a bad thing. We do not.
Oh yeah, absolutely not. I love camp, and I want there to be more of it in everything.
Yes, and it's definitely a genre and a thematic piece that has not disappeared because it can't. But listen, not everyone's gonna read Susan Sontag. Not everyone understands the concept of camp, and I understand that. But it's a piece of media literacy that is often removed and not talked about enough. Say that as it possibly being an element of homophobia, possibly.
It's possibly that, and I think also it's just viewed as like
It's viewed as
lesser, cartoony, childish, all these things.
Cheap.
Yeah, cheap. It's all viewed as, none of it. It's the same thing with like Japanese games and stuff where they'll be funny, like Stranger of Paradise, where it's like it's clearly trying to be a certain type of edgy, and people misread it as a mistake instead of like no, that's intentional, that's the point. The capitalism shit in Josie and the Pussycats, the McDonald's branded shower, the Target branded room, the big box of Tide in the corner of the room, those are intentional. They're not just there to be ads. That's like a clear, especially when you know that none of those were even paid for. It's a very clear directorial thing to be like, every element is like, it's inescapable. You can't avoid capitalism in the city. Out like that in Riverdale, none of that stuff was there for the most part. But it's specifically a choice to the moment they get into the city. There's not a single shot that doesn't have some form of like advertisement. It's like ever present. Because that's kind of what it's like when you live in one of those big cities where there's always billboards, always advertisements, always buildings that have, Target logos or whatever on them. It's inescapable to a point. And all Josie really did is kind of turn it up to 11, but it very much gets across the point of like the jump that goes from being in the country and everybody's just friendly with each other and having fun to you're in the city now, there's ads everywhere, suddenly it's about money. And every moment you're thinking about like money or capitalism or products, and you're not so much focused on like the interacting or like hanging out as much. It's like to me, it's a very clear directorial choice to have that there to kind of always remind you that it's like that for some reason.
Sure, it's one of those films that I 100% understand why it was not considered better at the time and why it was kind of hated. Because, like, there are some times when a film releases and, like, every awful cinema buff looks at it and they go, oh, this will be a cult classic. But realistically, sometimes that does happen, and you do have to wait with hindsight and context to see it for what it actually is and see, like, love for these kind of things.
Yeah.
It's that, what is it, the 30-year rule? Whenever a piece of media gets old to a certain point, people start to see, like, the flaws as positives and stuff like that. It's why stuff like Stranger Things got successful. It's why 80s culture was so synonymous. And now, like, tired gays who grew up in the late 90s are now looking back at it from 2022 and going, wasn't some of that actually pretty great? Maybe not in a literal sense, because all of this stuff was marketable and capitalist, but you can still look at it and you can still, like, see the good in it. You can still see the fun in it. And you can still see, like, yes, these things, while incredibly homogenous pieces of culture, do have merit. They do have camp. They do have sweet moments to them. And if you don't, like, view culture like that, you do kind of just end up with pretty homogenous pieces of media. And, like, I do think that these type of films have their place, and I do think that they are incredibly important. And I, again, like, as considering a majority of what I talk about, they are definitely queer themed, and they're beloved by queer people for a reason, because they are films that either talk about outsiders, they're either films that talk about kind of structures that are inherent to traditional society being flawed, and usually they attempt to kind of look at it in a sweet way. Obviously sometimes they don't, but, like, there's a reason why the gays still love this movie.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's the good thing about Josie and the Pussycats, is it definitely has had a resurgence. And if you haven't watched it because you've heard it's bad, it has very low ratings across the board still on a lot of review sites, which are all bullshit in my mind. But if you haven't seen this film, I do recommend it, because in terms of this type of genre film, Josie is honestly one of the best. It holds up surprisingly well. in today's culture especially, a lot of the messages actually, I think, hit maybe more than they did back then. Because since Josie came out, things have only gotten more capitalist, especially in American culture. And it still is, just like They Live, it's still pretty, you can watch it today and more or less it still hits just as well, if not better.
Pretty much. It is a film that kind of wants to talk about how bad capitalism, and yes, you could view that as a downer, you could view that as,
it does it in like a way that's not, too oppressive though or anything. It's very light and bubbly.
That's the best part about this movie. Like, camp is such a good way of intersecting critique, because no matter what, critique is going to view things and see it as negative or positive or whatever. Usually negative, and especially in the case when you're talking about capitalism, because yikes. But camp undercuts it and undersects it to a point where you can look at it, smile, and laugh.
Yeah, it's having a fun
because you
time
need
with
that.
it. It's like poking fun at it.
Yeah.
It's very much the view of it through somebody who has lived in it, and there's lots of little jokes that are just like, these small little things here or there that are just like some really dumb commentary. Like, again, the putting on a song and all of a sudden people want things that are orange, or they want to drink Sprite instead of Pepsi. Like, certain things like that, which are just like over the top capitalist bullshit stuff, just making fun of how how marketing is done. This entire movie is basically making fun of marketing. And
pretty much. And like,
fun.
Obviously you can make the point of like, life imitates art, because me and you like kind of sit back and go, haha, that's silly, but when the Sega stuff comes out, we do pog faces. As the term says, as the famous term says, like, you are not immune to capitalism, blah blah
You're
blah.
not immune to propaganda.
But you know what you do? You take that phrase, you put it on a pair of pink jorts, and you wear it proudly. And I think that's how I sum up this movie in general. It's a pair of pink jorts that say, you are not immune to capitalism. And you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
As long as you're having fun.
It's definitely, it knows what it is, I think, is probably the best way to put it. It understands that it is this camp cartoony movie. And, I genuinely think it's worth watching in the modern age.
Yep. It's excellent. It's sweet. It's heartfelt. It's really funny. It's really surreal at times. Everyone in it is just
absolutely amazing.
Shooting
they're all like
nines.
Top of their class at that point.
It just legitimately, like, excellent soundtrack, excellent casting, excellent background sets. It's just great. I legitimately would say, if you're ever having like a fun movie night, great one to put on, talk over. I would say this is a great movie to watch on a date, because one, there's a lot of references to make fun of, but also, like, it's very sweet at the same time. It's just a great film. It's a really good, fun, yes, it's a critique, but it's also a feel-good flick. It's a really weird mix, but, like, it really, really, really works. And I think if you're looking for something to maybe take the edge off of, like, as Dem said earlier, how bad things are getting, this is a really good way to do it.
Yeah, it's very it's refreshing is what it is. It's just a nice bubbly movie to consume. Ideally, smoking some of that good. That's when it really shines. But honestly, it's pretty good just whenever. At the end of each of these, we'll probably just do a thing to see if we recommend it. But yeah, this fully gets my endorsement as like a thing. I genuinely think everybody should watch it, especially if you are in any way queer. It might not be the most queer movie ever, but it's definitely one of them. It's definitely something that's important to that particular genre and subsection of media.
All the reals out there already know. They if they see this, they get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will say, like, as Dem said, like, with these kind of movies, like, obviously we will say if we enjoy them or not. It's pretty obvious that we enjoyed this one. But because this is going to be like a running theme, we're not 100% sure what film we're going to do next, but it will be my choice. We've said a few choices already in this episode, and I'm kind of torn between either Spice World or the first live-action Scooby-Doo film, so we will see.
Do you want to like leave it to a vote to before the next one?
We'll see. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I could post on my Twitter or your Twitter or whatever. But either way, one of those will be done. And we'll see what silly little things that we can find with these two films.
Yeah, I think going forward, the plan will just be kind of covering whatever movies we want. Technically, we can get into shows too. We mentioned it before, but at some point we want to get into watching One Piece.
And Riverdale.
Riverdale down the line.
The two choices.
One of them is 1,000 episodes long, so you know, obviously we're gonna do that one first.
And the other one is One Piece.
Riverdale. People are talking about One Piece being long. Wait till you watch Riverdale.
That's for the real ones.
But yeah, no, we're kind of unsure of where this will go or like what exactly the format will always be. But I know once you start One Piece, we'll probably just do like a check-in every so often to kind of talk about it up till that point so far. But if possible, I guess we'll see what our schedule's like. But we might just try to do this like monthly or whenever we can fit it in.
Yeah.
Just to make it semi-regular, but. Follow, I guess, us on Twitter both, and we'll probably announce it ahead of time. I'm not really sure what the plan is yet, but we'll figure that out. I guess we should just plug our things then.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to follow me, I'm Coffeecakes. You can find me on Twitter at Coffeecakes, but with the coffee part, it's 3 E's. You can find me on YouTube with the channel Coffeecakes. I review gay anime. And that's pretty much it. You can find me on everything else, including TikTok, Instagram, all of that, just at Coffeecake.
And I am at Demenza's Gate on Twitter, and my channel is also just Demenza's Gate. Pretty much that on everything so far, at least, thankfully. But yeah, just feel free to give us a follow, and I guess we'll just try to get the next one out whenever we can here. But thank you for joining us while we talk about Josie and the Pussycats. It's been a real blast.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for listening, and just please watch this film.
All right. Well, with that, I wish I could pull up the lyrics of Three Small Worlds or something. I feel like that's the appropriate. Maybe can we use that as the end song? Do you think it'll get us copyright claimed?
We will absolutely get copyright.
Can you get copyright claimed on like Spotify though?
Yes.
Well, I guess we can't then. Maybe I'll find like a kazoo cover of it. I don't know. Anyway. I guess join us next time as we cover more movies together. And thank you for joining us today. And please, for the love of God, just watch this film already. It's good. It's real good.
Bye, guys.